My name is Leo. I'm 29, and I'll never forget the way my brother Mark looked at me across the hospital bed where our grandfather lay dying. Don't even think about it, he murmured, his hand, adorned with a pricey watch, already closing around Grandpa Arthur's wooden valet box. You know you were never his favorite. The rhythmic beep of the morphine drip was the only other sound as I watched Mark slide our grandfather's vintage timepiece, the one promised to me since I was 12, onto his own wrist. Grandpa Arthur was unconscious, his breathing faint, and Mark was already claiming his treasures as if they were his by right. Mark, he specifically said. He said a lot of things. Mark's voice was clipped and final. But let's be real, Leo. I'm the one who visited every week. I'm the one who drove him to his appointments. I'm the one who actually gave a damn. The fabrication of it all caught in my throat, but I remained silent. Mark had visited exactly 3 times in the last year, each visit documented with a self-serving social media post about being such a dedicated grandson. In contrast, I had been there twice a week for 5 years, helping Grandpa Arthur with his shopping, his medications, and the deep loneliness that sets in after outliving most of your friends. But Mark was the golden child. He always had been. The son who went to business school, married the heiress, and lived in a sleek penthouse with a life to match. I was the one who dropped out of the community college program to support Mom when Dad walked out. I was the one who worked 2 jobs to keep our household running, while Mark was busy collecting degrees and promotions. The reading of the will is next week, Mark went on, his gaze fixed on the watch. But honestly, Leo, don't get your hopes up. Grandpa Arthur was always a practical man. He knew I'd make better use of his estate. I wanted to explode. I wanted to tell him about the nights I'd spent reading history books aloud to Grandpa Arthur. About the way he'd grip my hand and share stories of his younger days. About the countless times he'd said, "Leo, my boy, you remind me so much of myself at your age. Promise me you'll never let anyone dull your shine." Instead, I leaned down, placed a kiss on Grandpa Arthur's forehead, and walked out of the hospital. Mark could have his moment of avarice. I possessed something entirely different. The will was read in Mr. Davies's oak-paneled office on a rainy Thursday morning. Mark showed up 20 minutes late, his expensive shoes echoing on the polished floor as he entered in a tailored suit that likely cost more than my car. Sorry, he said, with no hint of apology. A merger ran long. His wife was a prominent figure in her family's corporation, though Mark spoke of her business as if he were closing the deals himself. Mom sat rigidly in a corner, her mouth set in a grim line. She had always been aware of the blatant favoritism, but had never intervened. Peace at any cost was her creed, even if the cost was her younger son's self-respect. Mr. Davies cleared his throat and started to read. The beginning was predictable: minor bequests to several charities, a donation to his old Legion Hall, and personal effects for old friends. Then he reached the main portion. To my grandson Mark, I leave my collection of wristwatches, with the exception of the vintage chronograph and the sum of 50,000. Mark smirked, no doubt already mentally spending the money. To my grandson Leo, Mr. Davies went on, I leave the remainder of my estate, which includes my house, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and the vintage chronograph that belonged to my own father. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Mark's face cycled through shades of white, red, and a deep mottled purple. That's impossible, he sputtered, shooting to his feet so fast his chair clattered to the floor. There's been some kind of error. Grandpa Arthur would never— There's more, Mr. Davies cut in gently. Mr. Arthur included a personal letter for each of you. He passed me an envelope with my name written in Grandpa Arthur's steady hand. Inside, a single page awaited. My dearest Leo, if you are reading this, it means Mark has already revealed his true character. I've observed him for years, hoping he would prove me wrong. But avarice and a sense of entitlement have deep roots. You, my dear boy, have dedicated 5 years to caring for an old man who could give you nothing in return but stories and affection. You never requested anything, never anticipated anything, and that is precisely why you are deserving of everything. The house is yours. Make it your home. The money is yours. Use it with care. But above all, know that your worth is far greater than anyone has ever led you to believe. Don't let them persuade you otherwise. Love always, Grandpa Arthur. P.S. Check the workshop. My hands were trembling as I refolded the letter. Mark was now pacing the room, his voice rising as he demanded to see the will, insisted on a mistake, and threatened to contest the entire thing. "Mark," I said quietly, "would you like to read your letter?" He snatched it from Mr. Davies' hand and ripped it open. As he scanned the page, his confident expression crumbled. "Mark, what does it say?" Mom asked. His voice was a bare whisper as he read it out loud. "Mark, I know you anticipated more, but anticipation is not the same as entitlement. You have a wonderful life with a successful wife and every benefit money can provide. Leo has spent years looking after others, while you have been looking after only yourself. Learn from his example. Perhaps then you will grasp what is truly important. I hope one day you will." The room was quiet save for the drumming of rain against the window panes. Mark looked at me with an expression I had never witnessed in his eyes. It wasn't anger, but a profound shock, as if he were truly seeing me for the first time. "Leo, he began, but his voice trailed off. "I didn't know he felt that way." "He felt a lot of ways," I said, getting to my feet. "But mostly, he felt forgotten by you." 2 hours later, I stood in Grandpa Arthur's workshop, the inheritance documents securely in my briefcase. The workshop had always been locked, and I'd never thought to ask why. Now, holding the key from his valet box, I understood. Inside were dozens of albums filled with photos documenting every visit I'd made, every errand I'd run, every afternoon we had shared. But beyond that, there were certificates, stock certificates, bond certificates, deeds to properties. Grandpa Arthur hadn't just been a retired history teacher living on a pension. He had been investing quietly for decades, amassing a portfolio Mark had never thought to inquire about. According to the documents I found, the final value was just over $3 million. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Mark. "We need to talk." I typed back, "No, we really don't." But his Porsche was already crunching up the gravel driveway. He emerged from the car slowly, as if approaching a delicate situation. "Leo, listen. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I replied, not moving from the porch swing, "is that you thought I didn't know exactly who you were this whole time." He ascended the steps cautiously, his usual arrogance gone. "I know I haven't been. I know I could have done more. But we're brothers. Family has to count for something." "Family means showing up," I said. "Family means caring even when it's not convenient. Family means seeing a person for who they are, not for what they can do for you." Mark sat next to me on the swing, uninvited. For a long moment we just listened to the wind chimes Grandpa Arthur had hung from the old oak tree. "I was jealous of you," Mark said at last. I nearly scoffed. "Jealous of me? The family screw-up?" "You were never the screw-up. You were the one everyone genuinely loved." His voice was quiet, younger than I had heard it in years. "I had to accomplish everything, be flawless in every way, just to get a sliver of the praise you received just for being yourself." It was likely the most candid thing he had ever said to me. It was also about 20 years too late. "That doesn't make up for what you said at the hospital," I told him, "or for the way you've treated me our entire lives." "I know," he said, and now he was crying, his composure finally breaking. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Leo." I wanted to forgive him. A part of me, the part that Grandpa Arthur nurtured, would always want to forgive him. But forgiveness didn't require me to forget. It didn't mean I had to pretend the wounds weren't there. "I need you to leave now," I said softly. Mark nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He stood up to leave, then hesitated. "What are you going to do with all this?" I looked out at the workshop where Grandpa Arthur had taught me how to build things, at the house where he'd told me stories and instilled in me the belief that I was capable, intelligent, and deserving of love. "I'm going to live," I said. After Mark drove away, I walked through the house, seeing it through new eyes. Tomorrow, I would give notice at my logistics job. Next week, I would lease a space for the custom woodworking business I had dreamed of for years. Next month, I would start an apprenticeship program for kids like me, the ones who had to put their dreams on hold for their families, the ones who were overlooked because they weren't polished enough to reflect the light. But tonight, I would sit in Grandpa Arthur's study, pour a glass of his favorite single malt, and write thank you letters to the few people who had recognized my worth when I couldn't see it in myself. The vintage watch caught the lamplight as I wrote, and I could almost hear Grandpa Arthur's voice. "Don't let them convince you otherwise, son. You are worth so much more."